Uwe, thank you very much for sharing these important insights on success factors with us. Now, we are thrilled to have an inspiring keynote by Andy Binns about corporate explorers. Andy is the director of Change Logic. It's a Boston-based advisory firm and member of the executive board of Fast Company. Furthermore, he's executive fellow at the Center of the Future of Organization at Drucker School of Management. Andy has vast experience in corporate innovation, both from a managerial as well as from a consulting perspective.
In addition, Andy is co-author of the newly released book, Corporate Explorer. It's an awesome book highlighting the most important factors for corporate innovation and, in my opinion, an absolute must-read. And you guys on site, you can also find it in your goodie bags. But now it's time to welcome you on stage. Andy, the stage is yours.
Well, good morning, everyone, and good morning to everyone online as well as here in the room. It's great to be here. And I have to thank our hosts from Bosch. You know, if you think back, we started talking about this in December 2021. Not the most optimistic moment in the life of the planet, and yet here they were, willing to make a bet on us being able to gather here in person. So a round of applause for our friends here. And I've really been impressed with the way that they got this organized and brought it together, so it's super. So as Louisa and Manuel said, I'm Andy Binns. I have the great honor to have been working with two awesome colleagues for a number of years, Mike Tushman from the Harvard Business School, Charles O'Reilly from Stanford, who is here today and will speak later. And together, we wrote this book, Corporate Explorer. And it's about how leaders build new ventures inside established organizations. And we gave it this somewhat provocative subtitle, you know, how corporations beat startups at the innovation game. We could have said, beat occasionally, have been known to beat once in a while, but we said beat, right? We declared that this happens. Now, this raises a number of important questions, one of which is, you know, what have I been smoking, and of course, where can you get some? Because most of our experience is that this is an extremely hard thing to do. Right? That corporations are slow to move, bureaucratic, risk-averse, and so on, and that it's the startups who we can look to innovate successfully. And you know, there's some validity to that. Most of us who've worked in large corporations know that there is a challenge. I worked for a number of years for IBM, for BT in the UK as well, and I know that there is a push towards the short term. Right, to being able to optimize for what you already have rather than what you might be able to get were you to explore. And indeed, Charles and Michael have researched in enormous depth this phenomenon of organizational inertia. You know, the many ways in which organizations get in the way and become, we could say, dynamically conservative, working very hard to stay the same. But you see, as we research this issue, another reality emerges. And that reality is of many organizations that are out there being successful at developing new streams of innovation. And some of them are hiding in plain sight. You know, there's something newsworthy about a new unicorn or a new round of funding for a startup. And you know, Microsoft pulls off an astonishing move from desktop-based software installed for Office to cloud-based software, dislodging Google's trajectory towards that, right? And it makes no headlines at all, right? NVIDIA, an extraordinary story of committing to innovation and moving from being a hardware company to also having a software platform, moving out of one market, but now creating autonomous driving solutions and cryptocurrency solutions for data center and so on. And that took an enormous commitment to innovation and also, by the way, generated about an 8,000% improvement in its share price over 10 years. Right? So in all of these stories of inertia and difficulty that corporations have, there are some really positive tales. And so that got us thinking, well, what's going on here? What is it that we might understand that could be transferable? And so this landed us on the notion of the corporate explorer. Let me give you an example of a corporate explorer and give you a sense of what I mean. This is the Vienna-based insurance company Unica. Right? It is operating in 27 countries. It's got about 10 million customers, about 5 billion euro of revenues. And it started in 1811. The original companies from which it formed go back to 1811. And then over time, it's obviously optimized as a firm towards serving different insurance cases. It serves like 50% of the health insurance in Austria, and then many other types of insurance across Europe. So this is a well-developed company. And just to put in context, 200 and some years ago it founded, and that's Beethoven's Vienna, right? So we can agree that this is a stable, mature company that conforms to all of our stereotypes that we might have about organizations. But yet, in Hungary, not even in the corporate center in Vienna, in Hungary is this character, Christian Curtis. He's there managing their existing traditional business, which is a relatively small part of the overall company. And Christian, who is a long-term employee, was the chief actuary of the company in Hungary, now running their business there. And he has a problem. And his problem is with the industry. He looks at the insurance industry and he says, this is not where we started. We started by pooling risk to share in a community, being able to cover one another when there is a problem, a fire or a flood or whatever. And it's that community pooling of risk. Now, we are in big tower blocks administering policies and trying to find out how our customers are defrauding us in their claims. It's kind of shifted. And he thinks, how can I reinvent this spirit that was there at the founding of the insurance industry? And so he asks himself a question. He says, what would Spotify do? How would they reinvent this industry to solve this problem? And out of that concept comes the idea of share risk, which is a subscription-based insurance model. And you're able to take it on a month-to-month basis. And it's all working on the phone digitally and so on. But importantly, you can gather what he calls cherries, that's why the name share risk, to then redistribute the profits from the business in your local community in different projects. And so that's bringing back that sense of what the insurance industry used to be. He has this idea, and he has some venture capitalists. And they're interested in backing him to do this. But he decides to go through his management chain. He's like 3 levels down from the CEO. He eventually gets this in front of the management board at Unica. And he says, I can deliver this superior product, superior service, and oh, by the way, instead of this tower block of administrators, I need 2 people to do this. And unsurprisingly, his CEO says, this is like, it's going to put a bomb under our industry if this is true, right? If this actually works. And he backs it, and it is now scaling across 5 or 6 countries. Actually, in 2 weeks' time, it launches in Germany. So rush out and buy your share risk insurance. So Christian manages inside an established company to build this new venture. And he's not alone. As we look across many different companies, many different industries, there are plenty of corporate explorers out there. Some of them are in the room. I've got Sarah Cavallo from Bosch here. Ellie, who's going to be on a panel later, is on here from Man Hummel. Right? And there's also Yoki Matsuoka from Panasonic. You know, she was in the founding team for Nest, now Google Nest, right? But now she's gone from being a serial entrepreneur. Now she's working as a corporate explorer. Right? Some of them have been spectacularly successful. Jim Peck is on the bottom there. Jim has built a multi-billion-dollar risk analytics business from inside LexisNexis legal information. So there's some really extraordinary successes here. But there's a question. How come they decide to do this inside the corporation? We know that there's this problem of corporate inertia, this problem of getting through the bureaucracy and the rest of it. And these people have either startup backgrounds or they have venture capitalists lining up to back their idea. So there's a question for us as to what is it that causes them to do this inside? And then if we can understand that, what can we learn about their success and how can we learn to apply it? And so this question of, why do they do it inside? Our hypothesis is that it sits somewhere in the process of innovation. This is a much simplified version of the chart that Uwe showed of their highly sophisticated innovation process at Bosch. It just simply says that if you're going to deliver successful innovation, you have to ideate, incubate, and scale. You have to generate ideas. You have to figure out whether they're any good and test them and experiment with them. And then you have to turn them into revenue, turn them into sustainable ventures. And so the hypothesis would be that the question as to why a corporate explorer is going inside would sit here somewhere, right? Now, ideation is all about generating new ideas, new possibilities, new options. And that obviously is the point of creativity, the point where you're opening opportunities to people. It's critically important in the innovation process, but it's also got a trap, and the trap is its addictiveness. Right? We get really excited by what might be true, what might be possible, how we might be able to do something new and exciting. And it's great to get people involved in it. It becomes a highly participative process along the way. The challenge is that can lead to many, many projects, none of which have a serious chance of scaling into a venture. And this then tends to generate sort of an innovation zoo. So many projects that actually corralling them into something that you can do becomes exceedingly challenging. And so it's unlikely that this is a place where corporate explorers get much advantage. Those that succeed are those that really focus on how do you solve a customer problem? How do you understand what it is that is motivating a buyer to engage with the service or product that you have? And we've talked a little bit about Christian Curtish, but Kevin Carlin here from Analog Devices, and we have his sponsor for this project in the audience speaking later. And Kevin observes that manufacturers have a problem with unplanned downtime, and that his solution connecting the hardware and the sensors that ADI has to the cloud and using different machine learning analytics, that they can be able to provide sort of insight to them, predictive maintenance for those machines and save them from unplanned downtime. So he's driven by solving this problem. And interestingly, whether it's Christian, Kevin, Yoki, there's a passion that they have for solving this problem. They're motivated very deeply by that commitment that they have. This is like an entrepreneur. This is essentially the same characteristic that you get of that sense of whether you're Jeff Bezos trying to bring the world a different way of buying things online, or whether it's Bill Gates reinventing software. The point is that entrepreneur's passion is the same in the corporate explorer as it is in the venture capital-backed entrepreneur. So again, not really likely to be the place where we see the reason why you go inside. And then we go on to incubation. Well, this incubation process is all about testing and learning. Many experiments to find out whether the idea we have is any good and whether customers view the world the way that we want them to, or would lead them to back our product. Now, this process is all about evidence. Many small experiments teaching us, essentially, what it is that the market wants or what the market is willing to pay for. And this is a problem, again, for corporations. Right? If you work in a large corporation, what is a manager expected to show? Confidence, certainty. This is about managing uncertainty. A good corporate explorer starts the journey by saying, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm going to learn my way to it. And so very often they have to be the teacher to the corporations, because mostly in corporations it's based more on impression and rumor and that sense of how you've done things in the past, not on learning new evidence. So again, there is a challenge for the corporate explorer inside the corporation. Those that are good at this teach senior executives how to do it. They take on the task of explaining how you work with these experimental data, which may not be the traditional KPIs of revenue or profit. They might be how many experiments you've validated. They might be about the rate of customer approval or adoption. They might be some measures which are idiosyncratic to a particular experiment. But this is a job of education. You should not expect a senior executive to be able to move directly from managing a large P&L to being able to think about a small venture with high uncertainty. Balaji Bondili at Deloitte has built this platform for doing crowdsourced talents for professional services, totally transforming the way that Deloitte, which is a multi-billion-dollar professional services company, how it serves its customers. And all the way through, he asked this question, what needs to be true in order for this to be right? And he used that every time he engaged his senior leaders as they were the sponsors for this project. Let me tell you what needs to be true for me to be right. And he's as confident about telling them when he's wrong as when he's right. So again, they manage this well, but it's probably not the source of the answer to our question as to why do this inside. So then, scaling. Here we've got a different story. These are 3 corporate explorers who successfully scaled new ventures. I started this work 20 years ago working with Carol Kovac at IBM, built a multi-billion-dollar venture serving the emerging genomics and proteomics research market through IBM. Deloitte I mentioned already, Balaji Bondili, and Jim Peck at LexisNexis. What these 3 leaders share, and indeed all of the cases we've observed of successfully scaling new ventures, is that they figure out how to combine assets. Some of those assets come from the core business. They're leveraging things that the business already has. Sometimes they're going to add on through acquisition. Sometimes they're going to build the assets for the first time. And often that will be might be the core innovation that they bring to the party, but it means nothing without the acquisitions and without especially the core business assets. And so think about these assets as being in 3 categories. They are about customers, capabilities, and capacity. And so by customers, it simply means routes to market. This is often where the biggest challenge for the incumbent organization lies. Right? How do I shift to a new customer set, a new customer base? But maybe there are relationships I can leverage. Maybe there's brand that I can leverage in this story. Maybe in capabilities, this might be technological capabilities. It might be product capabilities. It could be manufacturing. Right? How can I leverage what I've got to do this? Or indeed capacity. All very well being able to make something work, but can I do it for a market that is expanding rapidly? Right? And can I bring the kinds of scale that I need in order to be successful? And let me give you an example from the LexisNexis story, because what Jim Peck did was that he took the existing franchise of LexisNexis Legal Information, which was essentially serving lawyers and journalists, things like that, for news information and for case law, but also for public records data. And they assembled it in the United States, later moving to some other countries. And they put it online. They were actually originally a sort of dial-up online business. And what Jim Peck observed is that public records data could be valuable for other purposes if only he could link it to what an insurance company had or what a law enforcement agency had or other sources of these public data, that they could use it to assess risk before you had an insurance policy or before you took out a loan from a bank or whatever. But in order to realize what we would now call a big data analytics business, in order to realize this ambition that he had to create this new platform, he firstly saw, well, what assets have we got as a business? And critically for him was the existing public records data, the existing customer relationships, and the brand that they had. The market knew them and had some trust for them. But then he's going to buy some things. He buys some technology that links these data sets together from a startup. He then acquires a large firm that has the data, but none of the technology and none of the vision. And he stitches them together towards it and then starts to build out his value proposition so that now not only does he serve insurance companies, now he's serving healthcare and other ventures. Right? And so this is this combination of assets which allows them to go faster. And this is the key thing for the corporate explorer. How do I build a path to scale that allows me to leverage the assets that our core business has so that I can go faster than a startup? And essentially, this is the point that underpins our rather bold claim that corporations beat startups. Right? You start with something that you can use. And so when we say, why do it inside? That's the point. However, this brings a challenge. Right? Because the challenge is that if you're going to leverage the assets of the core, you've got to get closer to that core. So you're coming closer to the very thing that we started with saying was a big challenge, right? Was that sort of challenge of the beast in the main organization. So how do they succeed through this? Well, here's a few cases actually lack of success, just to the counterfactuals, if you will. And what we see, Bill Rue at GE Digital, apparently a separate organization, strong CEO support. John Windsor at the advertising agency Havas, explicit CEO support, apparently separate organization, same with Lorraine Chakowski. Each of them struggled. John Windsor's a fascinating story. He's chief innovation officer of this French advertising company. And his vision is, how can we use the crowd to change the advertising industry's model? How can we use crowd-based creatives to lower the cost of doing ad campaigns and also to speed them up and deliver good enough as good quality of how we do this? This transforms the way that advertising agencies work, because they're based on those creative insights and the teams that have built up over generations that know how to do this special thing that leads to the amusing and engaging TV commercials that particularly consumer brands use. And he's going to transform it. And he, as Chief Innovation Officer, and at this point, our colleague Mike Tushman goes to Paris to the kickoff of the innovation event to launch this new brilliant digital strategy. And as all good Harvard professors, he has his camera and his microphone, and he puts it under the nose of the Chief Creative Officer. And he asks, what do you think of this crowdsourced innovation that Havas is going to do? And she says, well, it might work, but would 100 monkeys write Hamlet? Maybe one day, if you give them long enough. She has no belief in this. Right? Two lessons from this. The first one is, be careful about allowing a Harvard professor to film anything that you say at any time. The second one is, you've got to watch out for these silent killers of exploration. These are the professional norms of the organization, what Charles will call culture. Right? The standard ways of working which have been honed over generations and typically attach to that professional competence, whether it be electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, actuaries, lawyers, accountants, or indeed advertising executives. It's that orientation towards the short term and to avoiding risk that exists in organizations. These are not problems that CEO support alone will solve. It's not sufficient to imagine that just because you have a top-down license, you are therefore going to shoot your way to success. There's too many cases where that is the opposite of reality. And one of the key reasons for this is how we think about organizations. We imagine that they are structured and hierarchical and formal. And I'm aware that I'm speaking in Germany, where I think in many ways that is one of the dominant, I'm getting a smile for that one, of one of the dominant concepts of organizations. In reality, in Germany and everywhere else, they're social networks. Yeah? This is a chart of who talks to whom, who has influence within the organization. And we often ask, who's the CEO in this chart? And rather ungenerously, people answer, it's number 90 and 24, the Johnny No-Mates down in the bottom of the chart. In reality, it's number 50 at the top, being heavily filtered in terms of the information that they're receiving. Yeah? But we all know, if you're going to achieve success with an innovation, you need support from number 59 and number 52. Those are the people who have influence in the organization and will shape the success of how you manage to corral the investors inside your business towards a successful outcome. And this is what corporate explorers do. These are people who have a social network. This is why most of the people that succeed at building new businesses inside established organizations are already sitting in the organization. They're not people you hire in from entrepreneurs. They're not entrepreneurs in residence. They are people you already have and already know. Same for Christian Curtis, same for Carol Kovac, Balaji Bondili. All of these people are insiders who figure out how to use a social network. And what they do is they have to find an angel. Somebody who's going to give them enough support to get them started. Maybe it's access to the C-suite. Maybe it's some resources to start their first experiment. Yeah? They're going to need an ally, somebody who's going to give them access to some resources. Maybe a bit of manufacturing capacity. Maybe use of a technology or some customers that they can do their first trials with. They're going to need advocates, people who tell the story. The most precious commodity that a corporate explorer has is their reputation, right? And if you manage your reputation well, you can ride the bumps of experiments that fail or results that don't turn out the way you expect. But you need someone who knows the story, who can correct the rumors that might run around as you are being written off by those who would rather that you not succeed. So advocates are critical people to have. But you will still find blockers. Still, if number 52 or 59 are against you, they're going to become very difficult to solve. And going head-to-head with them is really not a very good option. So you need an ambassador as well, somebody who's going to go behind enemy lines and support you. And so these sort of social networks are the way in which corporate explorers manage to achieve success, is by building around them, if you like, a social network, a leadership movement, a social movement for the business. Because one of the things that the corporate explorer is actually incubating a new way of working. This is not about just innovation. There's something also about changing the organization itself. And if you've got a movement behind you, then you're much more likely to succeed. And so they succeed with this understanding of organizations and how to mobilize them. What can we learn? Well, I want you to learn that innovation in organizations is, yes, about these formal disciplines of ideation, incubation, and scaling, Uwe's fantastic Bosch innovation framework, but it's also about change. And it's about being able to lead change successfully in large, complex organizations. If this was a room full of CEOs and C-suite executives, I would be talking about your role in that, because they also have a critical role to play, and there's an agenda for how they lead change. But notice something else about these corporate explorers. Nobody gives them the role. Nobody assigns them to the job of being a corporate explorer. They build the case. They get attention for this. They make this happen. And so they are empowered to get it done. And as they do this, they're always swimming against the tide. They're pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible. It's never convenient. It's never easy. You're never popular, frankly, as you do this. You will have lots of opposition. And you've kind of got to accept that as a part of the territory that's involved in teaching the organization, new lessons. But you should also take heart from other explorers. Right? The Apollo lunar landings were initially opposed. There's an opinion poll done in the United States in 1963. 75% of the American public were against them. Letters to Scientific America from leading scientists said this was a crazy way to spend our funding. And so now it's one of the landmarks of human history. And so we gathered today to talk about corporate explorers, to talk about corporate innovation. It seems to me that we have a responsibility to make exploration inside organizations normal, right? Expected, and we may not get rocket ships in the way Jeff Bezos has his own rocket ship as a reward for being a corporate explorer. But what we do get is the opportunity to change the organizations of which we're a part. And so we didn't write this book so that you could buy many copies, though if you'd like to buy many copies, that's fine. We wrote it because we believe there's a message that corporations need, that we need to build a movement that makes this a normal thing for organizations to do and enables them to renew themselves and lead in the next generation. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.